In this podcast, we chat about the loss against Blackburn, what's next for Boro, look ahead to Wigan with Barry from the PWU Likes podcast, and answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and this is all your Boro Match Day chatter in a pod.
Wants support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Ravanelli coming alive again. Jonny wants the ball played to him. Ravanelli spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Jonny, Dana and Tom. We are the Boro podcast that gives you all of your Boro match day chatter in a podcast. And a defeat to Blackburn Rovers. Boro a third bottom of the championship table with 13 points from a possible 42. Guys, there's no happy place today. It's a miserable place. Dana, how are you feeling about Boro right now?
Just a bit disinterested, to be honest. And I mean, I'd love to start this podcast on a positive note, but that's just how I'm feeling, disinterested. And I think apathy is the worst feeling that you can have as a fan, because we can have a whole range of emotions watching a football match and following a football team, from complete and utter elation to devastation and anger. But to feel nothing and to feel quite hollow and empty is quite possibly the worst feeling. And I know that sounds really dramatic, hollow and empty, but I woke up yesterday and the last place that I wanted to be was the Riverside. And at points last season from November onwards, that was the first place and the only place I wanted to be. And just massively disinterested and disconnected from what we're seeing. And that is just, I've said it so many times in this podcast, but just a massive shame how the season has plateaued the way that it has. And people will say, you know, there's still a lot to play for, and I completely agree. But the way that Boro are playing at the moment, we're going the wrong way down a one-way street, and it's pretty bleak.
Tom, any improvement on bleak and apathy?
To be honest, I think the way Dana's just summed it up there is like exactly the same way I'm feeling. I think yesterday woke up knowing that I was off to sell fanzines before the game, so I thought I'll go to base camp, I'll check out the Boro Shirt Museum exhibit, which was pretty decent. Went over at the ground, was selling fanzines. I was wearing the Boro Breakdown shirt, so a few people coming up and saying they love the podcast and stuff, which was great to hear. And then I got to about 10 to 3. I was like, I have to go in now. Like, that's why I'm here.
Our Tom, your tea's ready. Are we in?
Don't get me wrong. I think during the game, I was still kind of like engaged with it and everything. I think as soon as the whistle goes, that's always going to happen with football. But yeah, I think just really kind of deflated and disinterested at the moment. I saw Scott Wilson's article this morning where it's saying Boro are sleepwalking up towards relegation. Really good article if anyone's not read it to go and read it. But no, that mentioned the league table, and now there's like nearly a third of the season gone. And I just realised like I've not even looked at the league table yet because I don't want to. And I'm just thinking like, it's still too early. And now it's getting to the point where it's nearly a third of the season. As Dana said, there's still plenty to play for, but it doesn't feel like it should be. We should be that far in this position. It's just beyond belief, really, considering where we thought we were going to be at the start of the season.
Yeah, I echo both of your thoughts as well. And the part of having a third of the season near enough there and being in the position that we're in is a little bit worrying. But when we look at the sides, it's like we're not far away, and there's inches in football between success and failure, and we've just hit failure most of the time this season. And it can have a huge domino effect on a few things of the players' confidence, the fans' confidence on the manager and the players, and also the board as well, which we've seen quite a lot of that on social media. And I echo, it's like this, I want a bit of a vision from the club now in terms of where we're going next in terms of management, and we'll come to that a little bit later on around what we want the club to do and where we want it to be. But at this moment in time, it was really deflating yesterday. After about 15 minutes, I was like, well, I should just go home because we're not going to come back. And we nearly did, but I was like, we're not going to come back. And it was just a bit frustrating leaving the ground
There's
yesterday and going,
acceptance there. There's the acceptance there,
Mm.
isn't there? Exactly what you've just said there of, yeah, we're not getting back into this game, which is just, it sapped out all of the belief. The team don't look like they believe in themselves, so how can the fans believe in the team?
yeah, well, that's it. Like, and it was just so frustrating to see that after like 15, 20 minutes. And I looked at Alice and I was like, look, I'll take it to Dunelm and B&Q afterwards. We'll go and get some house stuff and I'll make it up to you that one. I'm sorry for taking you in the match today. And actually after as well was really frustrating. I don't like doing that on a Saturday night when you've got absolutely pound. But let's chat about Rovers because own goal from Lenihan, former Blackburn captain, giving them the leads, and a strike from Sam Gallagher was an absolute worldie. And what more, nearly brought us back. One goal before the break, and then Akpom missed from a yard out. We missed a big chance at the end, and it was just a very deflating performance. But then, how would you assess that entire performance against Blackburn?
Well, it was just far too easy for them to to attack us, to be honest. I mean, they exploited one of our main weaknesses, which is balls in behind. And I mean, as much as I love Anthony Dijksteel, he had an absolute shocker yesterday. He positionally was so far away from Diaz, who was constantly making those runs from outside to in. And they were plucking balls from the sky, both him and Gallagher. And I was jealous, actually, because we did it in the second half, or tried to do it anyway, where Dale Fry was punting long balls forward, but they were so inaccurate. I mean, I don't know what Dale Fry thought he was doing with one of them, where he just drilled it straight out of play for a goal kick. And I think we've heard a few things from ex-managers saying that Dale Fry is a good ball playing defender. He isn't. He's not. He can't pass the ball out from the back. He's just not. Like, we saw that in the second half. And even if that pass was to have been accurate, we have players that just have really poor touches that break the attacks down. There was a piece of play in the second half, I think, or it might be in the first, I can't remember. They all merged together, where I think it was on one of the flanks, where basically all that was needed was a ball into space, and it was Crooks that played the pass, and it was, again, behind the player that it was intended to be to. And he did that so many times against Millwall. It just continued against Blackburn. And yeah, I mean, just nothing pedestrian, predictable. There's no unpredictability in this team. It's very much always in front of opposition. It was in front of Blackburn every time, and it was just so easy for them to mop up. And I really liked their midfield of Morton and Wharton. I thought technically very good. Able to take the ball in the half turn, which is something that Boro don't have. Often you saw Crooks dropping into a deep Howson midfield position, and then Howson would spring forward to kind of have that link and progress the play a little bit quicker. But when you're having Crooks being the player to take the ball on the half turn, he's struggled to trap the ball this season. Never mind trap it and then turn and go. It was just breaking down at every opportunity. And yes, the second half was better. Jones definitely gave us something different, some drive, some energy and outlet. But again, much like Cardiff, it's just not enough when you're having to be better in the second half than a incredibly poor first half. You're giving yourself a bit of a mountain to climb, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think just on your first point around Dijksteel, from every time I watch him now, I just think you're not a right back. You're definitely more of a
He's not a
central
right wing
player.
back.
Yeah, he's not a right wing back. Not a right back either, I don't think. I think he looks more confident in that half space, more central space, and trying to
don't
bring the
agree.
ball forward. Do you not agree?
No.
I
I
don't think he
said
looks
this in our Telegram chat. I
Yeah.
think the thing with Dijksteel, I love him, but when he's pressed, he's so vulnerable and he doesn't have the passing ability. I know you've said so many times, play him in that sort of holding midfield position. He doesn't have the passing ability. I think we need somebody that's able to take the ball in the half turn and release it, much like what you saw with Wharton and Morton yesterday. That's a fantastic duo name, isn't it? Wharton
Bill
and
and Ben
Morton.
It just reminds me of like the Muppets, like the Muppets Christmas Carol, Marley and Marley.
Actually,
Love
does.
it.
Yeah, I
But
was
yeah,
gonna say,
yeah. Go on.
Well, my opinion was like if you play like maybe a single or double pivot, you've got someone who can kind of intercept the ball, which I think he's good at, and then tackle through and try and like he's a bit more of like a recovery defensive midfielder rather than someone who's going to play a half turn and then try and bring the ball forward. You can maybe use your 2/8s for that, but I think with Dijksteel, I think he's more of like a six, a six and a crab is probably the best way. You just want him to play across the back three or back four and just stop the people coming through. I think that's probably where he'd flourish, but I just don't like him on that wing side of things. I just don't think it suits him. That's why I think more central is probably the way he should be in positioned. Well, you can see it in his right centre back role, really, when he's played that role. I feel like he suits it to a T. So a centre defensive midfield role could probably suit him a little bit more. But it'd have to be a 6, not a ball progressing one, which we don't really have anywhere, but we do need. So I get your point.
Yeah.
Tom, on the defeat, do you think should have been a defeat? Do you think it was a correct result? Because we had some big chances yesterday.
No, I mean the result's lying. I think it was definitely the correct result because we just, it's the same as what we've seen against Cardiff this season, against QPR this season. We just leave ourselves with too much to do, and that first 15 minutes was absolutely shocking from us to pretty much allow those goals. I mean, the first goal was absolutely ridiculous defending, and not much you could do around the second after he hit it. Whether or not you could do anything about it beforehand, don't know. But we just left ourselves with too much to do. I do think we had the chances in the second half where we could have got back into it, and if we got one, I think we were getting another one after that. Because I don't think Blackburn actually did that much in the second half, at least not that I can remember. But we had absolute bullet header from Lenihan, which went wide. Fry hitting an absolute laser beam into the south stand, like it would have been very, very dangerous to get behind. Akpom missing from a yard out. I don't know how that stayed out. Like we had our chances second half. It's just we didn't take them. But I still think if we did get one, we were getting another one. And at that point, I don't think Blackburn were offering much going forwards, but we shot ourselves in the foot in the first 20 minutes, and it's just a story that we've seen too many times this season that keeps repeating itself. We are our own downfall in a lot of our losses.
And we were our own downfall in the first goal, Dana. Comical defending again, shall we say?
Yeah, I mean, that's the 4th set-piece goal we've conceded this season, which, I mean, when I looked at that, it was a bit of a surprise because it feels like we've conceded more, but that figure will get worse. But yeah, I mean, the ball is played short from the corner, and it feels like when you watch the goal back, the Boro just aren't anticipating that. They're not switched on, and it's that last second reaction to Hayden Hackney trying to close them down. But it's just set for Wharton to put the ball into the box. And, I mean, they have an attacking quartet of Phillips, Wharton, Gallagher and Hyam. They split. Wharton goes near post, Phillips takes up a central position, Gallagher sticks around that penalty spot, and then Hyam peels off to the back post. And I think what Boro players do in that situation is they bunch up to that near post, probably because they think that Wharton's going to hit the first man because that's all Boro players do. So they probably expect another team to do the exact same as them. But it doesn't. It's a fantastic ball from Wharton put into the right area. And if you watch McNair, he watches the ball the whole time. There's not one point where he looks over his shoulder for the run that Hyam has made off the back of him. And the gap gets bigger because McNair pushes forward, he advances and he tries to attack the ball. And then all of a sudden that gap is just widened completely. Hyam peels off, cushions a nice header back towards the goal. And then Lenihan, of course, it has to be him, puts the ball into his own net. But it's just so poor again how you can have a situation where there's a man free. Like, honestly, look at Hyam. It's unbelievable how free he is in that position. That's schoolboy defending, and it keeps happening time and time again. The disconnect and the disorganisation between that backline is alarming. And the only team in the Championship that I can think has a even worse defence than ours is Hull. They also look at 6s and 7s. And with Boro, I mean, talking about conceding the first goal, 45% of our goals have been conceded in the opening 20 minutes. And we've conceded the first goal in 8 of our 14 games this season. It has to stop, because we've spoken about that belief. There's no belief in the team to get back into it. And we keep conceding the first goal, and it gives us so much to do. That goal, pathetic.
Yeah, it is. And the second goal, to be honest, is an absolute worldie. I think we were going to dissect it. And when the long ball comes over to Gallagher, his touch to get it past to bring it round again, and so he can set himself for the shot is absolutely sublime. It's beautiful. And then the strike's fantastic as well. And yes, there's 3 players standing off, but by the time they actually clock that he's going to have a shot from about 30 yards, it's already in the back of their net anyway. So I think, again, it's like defending where you can be frustrated with, but I just think sometimes that the touch and the way he's turned and the way he's hit it top bins is probably more remarkable than the actual defending itself. But in terms of
He
like,
always plays a blinder against
Yeah.
us. I think that's the 3rd game in a row he scored against us, isn't it? Because he scored a worldie against us at the Riverside last season, then scored at Ewood Park. Now he scored again at the Riverside. I'm so sick of Sam Gallagher. I can't deal with stop.
He's becoming the new Jonathan Stead, isn't he? I mean, he always used to score against us. I mean, there should be a list of like players where like who like scores the most against Boro. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there'll be a list somewhere.
I said earlier in our group chat, you know for a fact if we were ever sign him, he was getting Jason Yule syndrome and never scoring again.
Yeah.
Always has a blinder against us, but he would never score for us if we signed him.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on, to be fair. Like, I don't think any Boro player that's actually done that is went on to score goals for us. Who was the other one? Was it Jordan Rhodes has done it? And then also, I'm trying to think of someone else who we've signed and just didn't score for us. Gusted was the big one.
Honestly,
Gusted.
you can pick.
Yeah.
There's a collection of strikers that have scored loads against us and never for us.
The remaining podcast is just us trying to think of names that have scored loads for us and signed. But Boro did score yesterday, and I thought it was actually quite a good goal, to be honest. So in terms of how the goal sets up, Howson actually does recover the ball, and then he gives the ball to Crooks. Crooks, instead of doing a half turn, he does like a 360-degree turn, and then decides to go forward with the ball. But I decided to crop that out. But Howson does a really good run where he starts to look into the advancing middle third. So by the time Crooks has been doing the more Besic, he actually finds Howson to be in a more advancing role. But there's two people that connect with Howson really well here, and it's Ryan Giles and Duncan Watmore. And what Duncan Watmore does really well here is that he points at Howson and goes, he goes, give the ball to Howson, and I'm just going to make this run. And as he makes it run forward through, you look at the right back of Britain, and he actually looks towards Giles. And the beauty of it is that as he's looked towards Giles, Watmore's made his dart and run through between the centre back and the right back, and he's able to get through and then just does the outside foot touch and then slots it in the bottom corner. But in terms of the movement and the goal itself, it's really, really good. And I know like Boro were poor yesterday, but there is little glimpses in Boro's play that is actually quite solid. So when Boro do get the ball with Howson, he threads that ball through to Watmore really well, and then we just come in and then slot the ball in the back of the net. But yeah, looking at Giles, keeping wide was really key to keep the distraction on Britain. And then also for Watmore as well to try and get in between the right back and the centre back as well and put the ball away. It was a good goal in all accounts of Boro. I know that it's going to be overshadowed in terms of the performance, but in that terms of player, that was actually good football. The first time we've seen a striker getting behind really and try and cause Blackburn some problems in that first half, and it was a difficult moment for us in terms of the second and third chances that we had. But overall, that was a decent goal. But we did make a tweak in the second half, Tom. We moved to a back four. It felt to me it was like more of like a 4-1-2-1-2, like a diamond. But I know Leo came on to it was more of a 4-4-2. But why do you think Boro moved to 4 at the back in the second half? And do you think it worked?
I thought it was Leo saying it was a 4-3-3. That just adds an extra layer of confusion because I didn't even realise it until probably about 5 or 10 minutes of playing that formation. I was like, why is McNair kind of like being pulled into midfield now? But it weirdly did seem to work better. Just kind of having that duo of Fry and Lenihan at the back. McNair was kind of doing his thing in midfield. I don't know if it's just because the flow of the game was going that way anyway, that we were having more of the ball. I mean, Blackburn's manager's probably going to come out and say now that we just wanted Boro to have more of the ball because we knew we weren't going to do anything. But it did seem to work a little bit better. And I think judging from what Leo has said kind of in the post match, where he said he'd like to kind of put his own stamp on the formation and work on a different one, but we just don't have the time in between games from like playing 3 games a week. It wouldn't surprise me if like over time we do kind of adopt to that type of tactical formation if we were to bring in a manager who preferred that. I know like a lot of the managers that have been talked about do kind of fit the 5-3-2/3-5-2 formation, but there are managers on that list who would play 4-3-3, and I think that little bit of the game yesterday probably just gives us a bit more confidence that could possibly be done, because I think we spoke about it for the last couple of seasons where we just didn't look confident in a 4. It needed to be a 5 at the back a lot of the time to suit the players that we have. I still think to suit the players that we have, that will possibly still be the case. I think especially when Matt Clark comes back. We've been told from West Brom and Derby fans that he is better in a 3, but it does look promising that at least 4 at the back is something that we can do if we need to switch to that during the game.
Yeah, and I think with the 4 yesterday, I think when we did switch to it, it was like more of a diamond. And when we were looking at Blackburn's play yesterday, I think they were in a 3-4-1-2. The Boro was trying to get that extra man in midfield. So I think what Blackburn were doing really well in that first half was they were occupying the half space really well. They made it really compact and difficult for Boro to break down. And Boro eventually had to try and to play through them and try and get an extra man in midfield to try and get a foothold, because for me they were just getting overrun time and time again. And your favorite player, then Lewis Travis, I thought was excellent yesterday, and he kind of made things really difficult for us. And then Morton and what's his name again? I can't remember his name. Morton and Morton.
There's 2 Whartons, isn't there? Adam and Scott.
Yeah, I was getting mixed up, but yeah, those 3, they just needed they just needed to be overrun a little bit because they were occupying that space so well. And Boro just weren't quick enough getting the ball wide, and it was just playing at the Blackburn's hands time and time again. And by the time Blackburn got the ball, we were already stretched, and they were able to break us down. But Dan, do you think we could move away from the 3, or do you think we're going to stick with the 3 or the 4 or whatever? I don't know. Should we just stick with 3 or should we just go to 4?
I think what Leo said after the game, he laid down the foundations and was open to the possibility of changing from a 3-5-2. I mean, I think game state matters in that Blackburn match, and I mean they were trying to see out the game where they were trying to maybe shut up shop a little bit and restrict us chances, which didn't really work because we did have them, but still I think it might be completely different and it might perform completely differently at the beginning of a game. And that's what I'm probably interested in and intrigued in, whether or not we will perform just as good as we did with that 4 at the beginning of a game. Say, for example, if we go into the Wigan game playing it, than we did switching it mid-game against Blackburn. Because, yeah, you're always going to get those situations, aren't you, where a team is wanting to restrict the chances and maybe shut up shop a little bit. And I think that's important, the context of the game. But, yeah, I don't know. I think on paper, it could work. But I still like the 3-5-2 going forward. It's just that right now, obviously, it's not performing particularly well. But you could have a 4-3-3, you could have a 4-4-2, said on tees afterwards, 4-3-3, those high wingers in Giles and Jones, having Boro and Dykestill as the fullbacks. But defensively, in terms of centre-backs, Matt Clark suits a 3. As Tom said, we've heard that from West Brom and Derby fans. I think question marks over where does McNair play. I think Fry would suit a 4 at the back, but yeah, the left-hand side I think is interesting.
To be fair, if we were to play back 4, I'd actually have Lenihan and Clark as my 2 centre halves. I'll drop Fry.
Would you?
Unpopular opinion, but I would.
Bold shout.
Yeah, I think Clark could be more of your ball playing centre half, and Lenihan can be your kick and hoofer. As if you want to play a really old fashioned back 4, that would probably be your 2. Yeah, I would. But anyway, we're in the bottom 3. Well, what are you going to do? It's my podcast.
Anyway, we're in the bottom 3.
Yeah, come at me. Anyway, we're in the bottom 3. But he is both concerned with like the position we find ourselves in, and I think just like I had a stat the other day around Boro have only been beaten by one or more goal once, and it was against Millwall, and the rest we've just been, it's been one goal in it for most games. So we haven't really been getting turned over, but we are in the bottom three. And do you think it's a bit concerning now that we're nearly a third of the season through, Tom?
I wasn't concerned until this morning, so cheers, Scott Wilson. But yeah, I am a little bit. I think it's going to be, whoever does come in as manager now needs to really hit the ground running. They've got a job on to motivate the players, pick them up, because judging by the way they look at the moment, God knows what's happened in this first 13, 14 games of the season under the two different kind of management / coaching teams. I would say mainly under the first one. They've got a job to pick the players up, and then they also need to. Hopefully, the foundations are already there in terms of the tactics, and we can get someone like a Rob Edwards in who can, play that same formation and just kind of work on drilling them on the training ground a little bit better, especially defensively. But I think the first thing they're going to do, like I say, is pick the players up.
Dana?
I think you have to be concerned based on the performances. I know you said there that we haven't been turned over in terms of a scoreline, but I certainly think we've been turned over in terms of performances. We just don't look like a team, to be honest. I know that's a very basic thing to say, but the communication, the organisation, it's not there. And yes, there are a lot of points to play for, but even the basics of this team are just really poor. And if it wasn't for Hull, I would probably put Boro down as the worst performing team in the league at this present time. I know Bristol City are kind of in there; their form has kind of plunged, but we're just so poor. And I take your point about it. It doesn't feel like we're a million miles away, but at the same time, I think a lot of what that is comes down to confidence, and we just don't look like a team that can bring that confidence. If Leo can't pick them up, then they're not going to be able to pick themselves up. So it has to come from within, and I can't really see that happening. And we go to Wigan next, who, away from home, we've picked up 1 point away from home this season. 1 point. I mean, stretch that back to last season, we haven't won away from home since beating Peterborough at the beginning of April. It's difficult to see where Boro's form really turns. And yeah, as Thomas said, the next managerial appointment is a big one, a really, really big one, to pick up the fans, pick up the players as well.
Yeah, when I was speaking to Barry from Progress with You and Unity podcast, the Lax podcast, and he did let me know a few times that it's 1 point out of the opening away game. So I was like, well, that's nailed on for Boro to beat, isn't it? But let's go to the praise and place, because the praise and place is the place. Let's give praise to a player, coaching staff, Dana's hairdresser, Tom's masseuse, anything like that. Who's in your praising place this week, Tom Green?
Well, shout
out to Anita.
I think for me it would be Howson and Stefan yesterday. And to be honest, I'm surprised in myself that I put Howson in it, because based on a lot of performances this season, I wouldn't have expected him to be one of my praise and place nominations. But he just seemed to find another gear yesterday. He seemed like the only player who was even kind of slightly angry about the position that we're in, because he was all over the place. I've not seen that kind of level of aggression from him. There was a little bit in front of the East Stand where he booted the ball away, like Eamon Crooks.
It hit me, that.
Did it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no, I'm not going to start a rumour, Dana, but I think he was aiming at you.
Probably, yeah. From our comments last week, that he doesn't lead from my example. Yeah, probably.
There's another bit towards the. Sorry, Joe, what were you going to say?
It's that Boro fan, Dana. I'm going to absolutely bout
There was another bit towards the end of the game where I think was this? It might have been the one where McNair got into the world's worst pushing match as well. But Yeah,
I saw that, yeah.
we got a free kick at the right hand side of the box, and like Housen and Crooks just instantly jumped on the Blackburn player who was trying to hold the play up and like ripped the ball from him on the ground. It's like something you'd see in the UFC. Only it was 2-on-1. It was, I mean, we were talking about like the leadership and stuff last week, and Housen being more quieter and leading from example and not being much of a shouter. It just seems like the role was reversed yesterday, and he was like, right, I'm just going to be the most aggressive player anyone's ever seen. He's possibly been working with Catmull, but no, it was really good to watch. And Stefan, could have been 5-0 by half time if it wasn't for him. He made some great saves yesterday, and the one second half where he had to like go a full stretch and pretty much claw the ball away from whichever Blackburn player it was at the time, that was brilliant for me. It was, like brave putting himself in the way of that and just being able to kind of get there, cover that ball, and like just claw it clear. That was brilliant to watch.
Dana, who gets your place in the present place?
Well, aside from my hairdresser Penny, I do I do echo what Tom just said there about Stefan. I think it's really important to note that because he kept the score down, and I think his goalkeeping probably deserved Boro to get something out of the game. And I know on the flip side, you could say that Thomas Kaminski's goalkeeping deserved 3 points for Blackburn, but I think Stefan was good. And I actually think he's improved since Chris Wilder's left. Whether or not that sweeper keeper role has sort of lessened in importance a little bit, and they've gone back to basics, as we mentioned last week. But I think he's been good since Chris Wilder's left. And he made some really, really big saves, and it's just such a shame that Boro couldn't get that equaliser because he was the one that was keeping Boro in that game. And yeah, he was good. And also shout out to Jones as well, because when he came on, I think Boro's performance changed and we went up a gear, and he was the one that was allowing Boro to have that outlet, and we seemed to have better combinations on that right hand side. So he definitely gave us a new lease of life in that second half. But we go back to it. We didn't win the game, and ultimately we fell short, which was a shame. But yeah, you have to give credit where it's due. And I thought Jones did change our performance in that second half.
Yeah, I agree. My praise and place nomination. I couldn't say praise and place. I was really difficult for me. I was going to go Zach Stefan as well. I thought Stefan was really good yesterday, and I mean, he absolutely has no chance on either of the goals. But yeah, and I also found that Boro fans really hate a goalkeeper from passing out from the back as well.
Yeah,
it just every time I touched the ball, it was like, just buddy, kick it anywhere, man. Like no one's
my
around.
dad was very that next to me, and I was like, shut up, Dave.
I was proper enjoying watching him myself. Like, I mean, it was keeping me on the edge of my seat. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen next, but it's like Edison's so entertaining to watch, and obviously Stefan's come from the same kind of like coaching over at Man City, and they want him to be a similar kind of player. It's fun to watch, although, like I said, it does add an element of danger and like a certain thrill to it.
It does, doesn't it? It does, and like that's what we pay £36 a game for, to watch moments like that. Anyway, let's move on to podcast questions, because each week you get the chance to ask us a question via Twitter, email at theborobreakdown@hotmail.com, or join our Telegram chat with over 300 Boro fans talking anything but Boro. But first question is from Liv, and she says, how do you guys feel about us not having a manager yet? And KP's also asked a similar question, so I'll combine it and says, what kind of manager are we actually looking for? Dana, do you want to have this one first?
Yeah, I think the first question, I actually feel sorry for Leo because I think it's throwing him under the bus massively. You know, this team are really kind of just continuing their performance from when Wilder was here and the end of his reign. And Leo's in this position now where, let's be honest, I think it's incredibly likely that he will not get the job. So he's holding the fort a little bit. And I think a lot of the time when you see these poor performances, you always want someone to blame. And at the moment, there's a lot of criticisms of Steve Gibson. But I think it's maybe putting Leo in a bit of a vulnerable position as well, because he's such a well-liked figure at this football club, and quite rightly so. You know what he's been through. You can't help but feel connected to him, and I just feel sorry for him that he's managing this Middlesbrough team, because they're just so poor. You know, he said in the game, in the interview after the game, that you work on these set piece situations only for them to look like they haven't, basically, even though they have. It's like their brains just fall through their asses whenever we get whenever there's a set piece against us. And I mean, let's be honest, some of our players are thick at the moment. Let's be real. The way that they're performing is ridiculous, but hey, who am I to say that? But yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for him, to be honest. I don't like the fact that we haven't brought in a manager yet, but patience, I think, is key. And I would rather us be patient and get the right manager than jump into another one like we did with Tony Pulis, for example, and have him on speed dial and be like, "Hi, it's Steve. Do you want to take the job?" Like, I'd rather not do that. So, yeah. And I think what we need, I don't have a clue. I don't know what Boro are looking for, because Boro haven't really. What is Boro's direction? I don't know.
Yeah. Hi, Steve. Also, do you have any milk? I can give you a back tomorrow. It's all right.
You love it up here. It's very much like South Wales.
Oh God! What kind of manager are we looking out for then, Tom? Not a Tony Pulis, I guess.
I hope not. Yeah, I think it needs to be someone who fits that same kind of style. I think from the looks of it, although we've had no kind of like official communication of this is what we're trying to go for, our model now looks like we're trying to set up to be very similar to kind of like Brentford or Norwich, where you can just bring a new manager in who plays that system straight away, and you don't have a big overhaul of players. That'd be great. So a manager who plays that same formation, as I mentioned earlier, like a Rob Edwards, who can make a few tweaks to it. Obviously has that ability to lift the players, but also has the tactical ability to kind of drill them into what is required of them in that formation would be great. I think long term that's really what we need.
Okay, then. Well, the next question is from Simon. He says, "Is Steve Gibson right to want some of our present backroom staff to be kept on when a new manager comes in, or should the new guy have a final say on who his backroom staff are?" Tom, I'll stick with you. What do you think?
Again, I think keeping some of those backroom staff on it does kind of fit that model. You know, it's people, the players who are already familiar with, people who are already familiar with that sort of philosophy, and you'd hope that long term they can. Some of those coaches could even go on to become managers or head coaches when someone leaves. I'm pretty sure Brentford have done that a couple of times, and I'm not sure about Norwich off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure Thomas Frank, one of the assistants at Brentford before he got the job. So I do think the new head coach needs some sort of saying who he brings in, as in like an assistant or any other coaches that he really wants to work with. But the coaches that we have coming through at the moment, and I think especially if we're playing that same style of football all the way through, Cattermole leading the under-18s, there's a progression route for him to eventually become one of the coaches of the first team and maybe take over at some point in the future. I know there was kind of like a lot of backlash this week where he was being suggested as a serious candidate, and being honest, I wouldn't want him right now, but I think, as I said, there's a progression route for him there. And maybe in a few years, once he's been around that coaching setup a lot more, he's done more in terms of management, maybe moving up to like the under-23s and into the first team, he might be ready at that point to take over. And then, we've got the right sort of situation for internal candidates at that point as well.
Okay, then on the next question, it's from Chris. He says, should we accept we need big changes, not only at managerial level or within the squad, a new long-term strategy that elevates us up to pole position in a sustainable way is needed. This isn't easy, but throwing money into an endless pit senselessly is not the answer. Dana, should we accept that it's not only managerial level, it's also above?
I think it is, yeah. again, it's just the lack of communication. We won't fully know, will we? And even with communication, I don't think we'll fully know, because they're not going to tell us the ins and outs of the football club, are they? But a little bit of insight would help, because at the moment I think fans are restless, and that restlessness will just grow. So yeah, this isn't just a managerial problem. I think we've seen that. We've had proven managers. We've had proven managers with a bit more sort of presentness about them. Chris Wilder. We've had managers that are proven with that experience behind them. Tony Pulis, Neil Warnock. We've had project managers in Gary Monk. We've given Jonathan Woodgate his first taste of managerial experience. First experience of managerial experience. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it is. Got there in the end. But we've had a whole range of managers. I think this is a problem that maybe, as my good friend Flo said, the fish always thinks from the head. So,
well, that's like kind of like a Gandhi. Do you know, like the Gandhi meme? I could put that on there. That was,
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah,
Definitely up there with never back the early kickoff, like.
Wise words. Wise words. Another person who's very wise is Tom Muldowney, and he says, "Have the last two poor results and performances moved the goalposts in terms of what we need as a new head coach? For example, is it too big of a risk now to look for a first-time manager, and we need an experienced head to steady the ship?" Danny, you were just alluding to a lot of it there, around like what we've had every type of manager. So. I mean, for me, I don't think it does change anything at all. I think we still need someone who's more of a development coach, who's like, in terms of like, who's going to develop these players in more of confidence, someone who's very high in EQ and just trying to really understand these players, because I feel like our confidence is so shot and it's so easy to break. I think with football, it's obviously it's inches in terms of success and failure, and then but for Boro, like every time we have that failure, it just seems like our confidence just falls through the floor straight away. And I just feel like we need someone who's a bit more headstrong in that front to try and turn results around, because there was a part of last season where we looked invincible at times, but we're just so fragile mentally. I just think we need someone now who's going to be that type manager who's going to develop these players, not just on the pitch but off it as well. But that could come from an experienced manager. But I just think that a development coach is probably needed. What do you guys think? No, fair enough then. I'll just...
Yes.
wait for a cue there.
I didn't know which of us was going first.
Okay. You're both so polite. You didn't want to go first. All right, Tom, do you want to go first? And do you want to pass the teddy over to Dana afterwards?
The talking Teddy, yeah. No, I feel like a development coach is what we need at the moment. I think it, like I said, we don't know what the long-term vision is. We can only kind of guess from what we've heard in terms of the recruitment strategy and what we're trying to kind of do on the pitch as well. I think in terms of like the players that we've got at our disposal, we need someone who can develop them. I don't think, I mean, Wilder was saying that they're Force and Hoppy development strikers. And to that, I understand it at some extent, because the development strikers in the fact that in 3 years' time, we should be able to sell them on for, 4 or 5 times what we paid for them if they develop properly. It doesn't mean that they can't come in, make an impact now. So I think whoever does come in, they need to be breeding the kind of right sort of environment for these players to grow in order to kind of do that. And, in a couple of years' time, we sell on these players for a profit. And then it does become more and more like that Brentford model, where you're making a ton of profit off players, and then you can bring in similar molds of players for cheaper. And then, long term, you get to the Premier League, and that's what every club's aiming for. So it's going to be a coach who can do that. Instant results are also important in my opinion, just because of where we find ourselves in the league at the moment. But I think we're looking for someone who can come in, make an instant impact, as I said earlier, in terms of like lifting the players as well. But then longer term, you need that type of coach who's going to start off that type of environment to really build on what we have and being able to kind of like sell on down the line.
Okay then, Dana, I'll come to you in a second because we have a question and a quote from Boro Memories, and they say, "Does Steve Gibson intend to actually explain what his plans are for our football club at some point, or are we just the peasants that spend money we don't have on supporting a team that concedes goals that you expect to see in an under-8s game?" So obviously strong words, but are you actually surprised in that we're not hearing from the club at all at the moment?
No,
No.
sadly not surprised at all. It just seems like that's the go-to strategy, to just leave it and let the football do the talking. But the football's doing the talking now, and it's just diarrhea, isn't it? So it's not great. I think clarity would be nice, but I'm not surprised that we haven't got it.
Hmm. To be honest, I would love for us to come out and just have that open conversation. And I don't want something that's produced by Boro. I want something that's produced like independently, because I feel like it's very difficult to like really understand where we're actually going. Yes, we've got a head of footballing, but we don't know what his vision is, or is he even actually getting a say in this? Because if he's not, then he's probably going to walk, and rightly so. We don't really know where Gibson is in terms of what does he want to achieve now. Does he want to be a club that's a bit of a yo-yo club? And that's fine. Just if you want to be one, then we'll be that type of club. That's fine. We get it. Or do we want to actually have a vision in terms of we just want to be a sustainable football club that brings people through, sells one for profit. Yes, we might hit the promotion once or twice, but most of the time we're just going to stick around the second division, and that's fine. Whatever. I just want that clarity. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to get everyone. And this might say, oh, well, yeah, it might not sell season tickets. I think what sells season tickets is fans being connected with the football club, and they're not. And I feel like at this moment they're not connected anymore. And there's some unbelievable people that work at the club, like unbelievable people. But I feel like their voices might not even be getting heard either, in terms of what they want to achieve either. So it's a bit frustrating across the board. I think they're fans just as much as we are, and everyone wants that opinion, and everyone wants that opinion from the club as well, to kind of see where we're going. Because at this moment, I feel like we're a bit of identity crisis. But Tom, like, are you surprised that we're not hearing anything either?
No, not surprised, just because it's what I've kind of come to expect. It's not often in my 29 years of supporting Boro that I feel like we've had Gibson going on to BBCTs or anything like that. I can only remember around one or two occasions. It might not even be recently anymore, because all these seasons are just kind of like blending into one in the Championship. But no, I think it would be nice, and I think you see it at other clubs as well. Before he joined here, I listened to a full Norwich podcast with Kieran Scott, where he was kind of outlining what he does at the club. I think was he head of scouting at that point or something. But that's the type of thing that I feel like we should be having. I agree with you, Jonny. It shouldn't be something that is produced by the club, because I think when Kieran Scott came in, it was like a 5 or 6 minute interview we got with him, and I think it just leaves more questions than it answers when that happens. I think it does need to be an independent interview, whether that's on BBCTs or whatever. Just sit down for an hour. If you need to break it up, let Gibson pick a few songs to have intervals with and stuff like that. Bit of Stale River halfway through, but just something like that would be great, and it would help with the fans' connection to the club so much. I did think that was improving under Wilder, to be honest. And I think it was mainly the football that was doing that. But I don't know, everything about us in my lifetime kind of seems so closed off, and you see things very different at other clubs as well.
Do you think Boro are in a bit of identity crisis, Dana?
Yeah, I said this after the game on BBCTs. I mean, as I said, the managers that we've gone through, it's always a sort of younger, more progressive manager than the repairman in Pulis and Warnock. I think Boro need to just find their place. And you said, Jonny, if that is being a yo-yo club, so be it. If that's being competitive in the Championship and trying to get into the Premier League, so be it. If that's sort of consolidating our place in this division and developing internally, so be it. But we need to find our place and we need to stick with it, because far too many times have we appointed a manager and really sold a vision of a really good progressive project, and then as soon as things go wrong we hit the panic button. And I will say that in terms of managers, we were right to sack Gary Monk, we were right to sack Tony Pulis, we were right to sack Woodgate, and that's fine. But that whole golden thread thing, and I know that this is probably another quote that's used to be as a stick to beat the club with, but it's used as a stick to beat the club with because we literally just abandoned it. And it was so
first hurdle.
Yeah, the first hurdle. It was great to hear that from Woodgate and Bevington and whoever else was in that press conference. It was brilliant. It was everything we wanted to hear. But where is that now? Is that actually, I mean, I'm saying that we abandoned it. It might even still be there, but we just don't know because there's no clarity and no communication. I said on last podcast, Boro don't need to open a desk drawer of dirty secrets. We don't want to hear that. I mean, it's nice for, getting the popcorn out and seeing what happened under Wilder, but we don't need to hear that. It's just that what is Middlesbrough Football Club? What do we want to do this season? What do we want to do going forward? I would love to hear from Kieran Scott as well, because we were supposed to get an interview with him, and Liam Wilson from Middlesbrough Supporters Forum said that unfortunately just didn't really materialise in the way that it wanted to be materialised. It would be brilliant to have Kieran Scott on this podcast or on another podcast or on BBC Tees. Let us hear it. We're not gonna. This isn't us throwing tomatoes and things at the people at the top of the football club. We just want to know. We just want to understand. Is that communication? There's a lot of restlessness right now. When a club is not performing, not the team, this is the club not performing for the best part of, since we got relegated in 2017. Questions will be asked, and those questions will be moved from the playing performance to the club's performance. And if those questions are met with silence, that restlessness will grow because those questions will grow. And to stop that, or maybe not stop that, but to sort of, I don't know, block the flood, I guess, of this restlessness a little bit and calm it down, it would be great to hear from somebody. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you as well. I think with results, like they only mask problems for a short period of time. I think football is such a emotional game. It's up and down. You're top of the world when you win. You're at the bottom when you get beat. And the one thing that should be stable is the direction, and have that utopia view of just, this is where we want to be, this is where we want to go. We're going to go there, and just regardless of the pain we might suffer in like the first couple of months, that's what we're going to try and achieve. And if that's like going to have a development coach from who gets, like Tommy was saying earlier, say if we got Rob Edwards in, Rob Edwards leaves, his assistant takes charge, then say Catmull takes charge, and there's just like a recurring like theme that we're going to be doing.
It's like seamless,
yeah. Like everyone has a plan. I feel like the plan's just not there, and it's like you were saying, I'm not like I'm not throwing I'm not throwing tomatoes at the club. I just want to understand, like, what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to do? Because from speaking around a few people yesterday, no one has a clue what's going on. They're just like, I'm paying 36 quid to go and watch us maybe get beat, but then we also have a manager, obviously Leo, who loves the club, but like we all know really realistically he's not going to be the manager much longer. But we don't have a clue who we're going to try and hire. We don't have a clue, which, to be fair, we'll keep behind closed doors. That's perfectly fine. But it's like the identity side of things, we just need to maintain and understand. And yes, this head of football's been in for a year now. That's fine. And stuff takes time to progress behind the scenes. But if you explain what you're trying to do, improve what you're trying to do, or even come out maybe 2 or 3 times a year and to say, look, we're sticking to this plan, we're doing this, so be it, fine. But just don't go missing. You know what I mean? But I mean, like, open invitation, really, isn't it? Like, if Steve Gibbs wants to come on the podcast, come on and then chat about Boro, do it. And then Kieran Scott's exactly the same. Come and do it. Like, what, we've got like 5,000 to 6,000 listeners every week. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone wants to listen to them speak, and to speak very openly and not be produced, and just see what they're feeling, because that's kind of what fans want. And I think we pay enough money to kind of really get that, to be honest, because every other club does it. I think every podcast I've spoken to, they've had a big senior person on as well. We haven't, or they just don't speak, and I think it's really frustrating for every fan. But should we look ahead to Wigan? Because I feel like we could talk about this all day, because on Wednesday we got to DW Stadium with the first name Richardson's Athletics. So to get some insight, we spoke to Barry from the Progress with Unity Athletics podcast to get some insight. Barry, how's it going? How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Enjoying life. How are you? How are you, Johnny?
Could be better. I know we've spoke earlier today, but yeah, it could have been better. I think I'm in a much better mood now than what I was probably yesterday. But it's getting there. Still saying living the dream. But Barry, talk to me about Wigan this season, because it looks like you're doing really well in the Championship so far. Liam Richardson's been pulling the strings over the last year or two.
Yeah, it's just brilliant times, considering where we've come from, and that's the main thing. I mean, we was sort of an established Championship club until administration hits, and then everybody knows what happens. You get 12 points deducted, and we find ourselves getting relegated on the last day of the season, having lost just one game since February. You know, so and that last game of the season was at the end of July. If you remember, during the call, I mean, that was totally weird. So we went into administration. Everybody left. Liam Richardson stayed. He did a brilliant job through the admin period. Kept the club together. Kept the team together the best he could. But the main thing was he saved us from getting relegated to League Two, which was an amazing achievement, considering we were playing mainly under 18s and a couple of journeymen. And then in the last summer, he recruited brilliantly with only 3 players under contract, so we had to bring a full squad in. His main achievement, though, was bringing his coaches in, Rob Kelly and James Beattie, and they've been fantastic. They've been a fantastic coaching team. We won League One last season, came up as champions, and we've just carried on. I think most Athletics fans last season would have taken mid-table. It was quite obvious after the second game, we beat Rotherham at home, that we were going to be challenging at the top because we looked special. We looked like a special team. The characters were there. And basically, we've got the same starting 11 that we had last season. I mean, yesterday we played Sunderland. We lost up at Sunderland. But in that game, there was only one player in the starting 11 who wasn't with us last season, and that was Nathan Broadhead. Everybody else who started that game was with the Wigan Athletic last season. And that's what Richardson likes. He likes continuity. He likes keeping fair for players. He is very loyal to his players, and they're loyal to him. And it's just brilliant at the moment. People often ask me, what do I think of Liam Richardson? And I always say, for me, he's got a job for life at Wigan Athletic, what he's done. Like I said, when everybody left, he stayed. He led from the front. He was offered jobs. He turned them down. He didn't know if he was going to have a job. One stage, it looked like the club were going to the wall, but he still stayed. I only saw him down once, and that was after a 5-0 home defeat to Hull City. He lost his rag a little bit. But that, in 2.5 seasons, 3 seasons nearly, that's the only time I've seen him lose it. And the amount of pressure he must have been under at that time. Brilliant. He's a great coach. He's a great tactician. He's very astute. I'm just pleased we've got him. Not only is he great on the football field, he's great on the training pitch. I mean, everybody's aware what happened to Charlie White last season. Who was the first person on the scene giving CPR? Liam Richardson. He's so widely regarded at Wigan Athletic. The South Stand is now named the Liam Richardson Stand. We've got a stand named manager, an incumbent manager. I was trying to think the other day, any other club in England got that. The only one I could think of was possibly the Sir Alex Ferguson stand at Manchester United towards the end of his reign, though. So I mean, this is what we think of him. So yeah, you get the idiots. I mean, we lost against Sunderland, so people were saying Richardson's clueless, but that comes with the territory, don't it? So 99% of Wigan Athletic supporters hold him in such high esteem. He's brilliant.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're saying he's brilliant, but how has he got the best out of this Wigan side? How is he currently setting up, and what does he tend to do with his side?
We set up one of two ways. We either go 4-2-3-1, or we go 3 at the back with wing backs, 2 midfielders, 2 behind the central striker. So we either go one of those 2 ways. The last 2 games we've gone with 3 at the back and played wing backs. Our home game against Blackburn, it was an absolute treat. They had 3 attempts, none on target. We snuffled out the threat of them, and they got that Brereton Diaz up front, and they got Sam Gallagher as well, and they never got a sniff. Then we went to Sunderland, and we were quite well there to a degree. But I think that Patrick Roberts is a quality player for Sunderland, and he was cutting inside quite a lot. But they weren't getting anything on target. We went a goal up, and I just thought it was another away win coming. But they did us with 2 deep crosses yesterday. But it's unlike us to get caught out with those deep crosses. It was a bit of a strange game, really, that one. I think Sunderland are a bogey side for us. They've beaten us the last 4 times we've played them. The only time we've beaten them, I think, in the last 10 years is when we was in administration, believe it or not. We did the double that season. So it's very weird relationship between us and Sunderland. But that's how he sets us up. Very hard-working team. We like to press high. Centre forward will run his socks off for 60 minutes. Whoever he plays, he might play Charlie Wyke, he might play Josh McGuinness. Whichever one plays starts the game will come off after an hour, and the other one comes on. We press high. We like knocking the ball about at the back. So we like, once we get possession, we like it. We do it on the break quickly, but not often. So we seem to pick our moments as to when we're going to do that counter attack. I mean, there's many a time I've been in the stands thinking, come on, let's move, move. And they've not been, they've been like keeping possession, And then another time you think, oh, don't knock that ball there, and up it goes, and we end up scoring a goal off it, So, I mean, they play to a plan. They know exactly what they're doing. The players know the manager, what he wants from them. They all know the roles, and it doesn't work every week. We've come up a division, we've come up against quality teams, but it's doing all right so far this season for me. We were, I'd expect us to be.
Yeah, I think the job he's doing, especially with the squad that you've got, people might say it's not championship quality, but I think you've kind of proven the doubt was wrong and starting to really progress this season. In terms of like the star players that you've got, Boro fans will know Charlie Wyke. He came through the Boro Academy and then got shipped out just pretty much straight away. Thought, you're not going to make it. See you later. But he has been off for a while and came back obviously with his heart issue, but. Who should we be looking out for on Wednesday night? Who's going to cause Boro all of the problems and probably score the winner against us?
If I start at the back with, we've got a centre-half called Jack Watmore, and we're going to run a free transfer from Portsmouth. And last season, he was known as the Bobby Moore of League One. Absolutely. He's a beautiful player. He's only 25. He's blonde hair like Bobby Moore. He never seems to have to make a challenge. He reads the game so well. He takes the ball off the opponent's feet, and he just nicks it off the feet. Interceptions. He's like a Rolls Royce defender. He's I still can't believe we got him for free. To be honest with you, I think there'll be at the end of the season there'll be clubs coming in for him. He's just pure class. Nathan Broad's always a danger. He's a when he shoots, he hits the target, and that's what you want from your strikers. He's already got 2 goals, even though he's only started 4 games. He's got 2 goals already. Both of them very important goals as well. Both of them in 1-0 wins. So he scores those goals. Calvin Wang, who's personally my favourite player at the moment, he's out injured. He's got an ankle injury. He's come through the academy. Really good player, but he's not going to be playing. With a young lad, Tello Asgard. He's Norwegian descent. He's a Scouser, but he plays for Norway under-20s. His mum and dad are part of the Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, so that's why they're Norwegian.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so he's been with us since he was 13, and we played him in our admin season as a 17-year-old. He's shot up. He's massive now. He's got weight on. He come on yesterday. He started a few games already this season. He's scored for us as well. What a talent he is. He's one of those that's going to go all the way. Beautiful feet. And I don't mean like he's got a nice, the nice looking feet. I mean,
like pedicures, again, like feet massages, that beautiful type of feet. He's like, oh yeah, okay.
No, he's just so good on the ball, and he scores some spectacular goals as well. Now, if I was going to pick out a goal scorer, I'd pick either Telo Asgard or Broadhead. To be honest with you, I'd pick one of those two in a 1-0 win.
To be fair, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a 1-0 win. I mean, so you're going to go off that with your prediction then, 1-0 win to Wigan?
Yeah, I think that's how I see it. I know your away form is something to be desired, isn't it?
That's why I'm not talking about it. That's why I'm not talking about it.
Having said that, our own form. I mean, last week we won our first home game of the season, and we've lost 5-1 to Burnley, and we've lost 3-1 to Cardiff City, and that could have been 5-1 as well. So we took a couple of pastings at home, and I don't know why. I don't know what that is. Apart from the fact that Burnley were fantastic when they played us, but Cardiff weren't, and they still could. So we're very strange at home. Away we were really good, but at home we're strange. So even though I've said 1-0, I wouldn't put my mortgage on it at all. I won't put any money on it.
I was going to say I wouldn't either. With Boro at the moment, we like going 2-0 down before we start playing. So it could be anything, I think, on Wednesday night. But one final question for you, Barry: where can people find the Progress with Unity podcast? And it is a really good show. But where can people find you? Whereabouts are you?
The best place to find us is on Twitter at PW Podcast. And there'll be a Boro preview on there. And before we do finish, there's one thing I need to mention. Ashley Fletcher.
Yes, Ashley Fletcher, yeah.
Who was absolutely electric for Middlesbrough, I thought. He was brilliant. And we've got him on loan from Watford. And to say he's not up to speed would be, it's a bit of an understatement. He looks like he's had no pre-season whatsoever. So he's been coming on as a late sub in games. So I'm not sure.
I was going to say, just watch the highlight reel of Ashley Fletcher because he scored some absolute worldies for us. But he played for Boro at a time where we were just horrendous. So I don't think he got the rub of the green probably at Boro, but I think he went to the USA last year, I think, right? And then he's came to Wigan now. So I hope he does well. But now that you've said that, and I forgot he was playing for Wigan, so he's guaranteed 89th minute Ashley Fletcher, Wigan 2, Middlesbrough 1. It's going to be my prediction from now on. But Barry, thank you so much for coming on, mate. I really appreciate your time, and I absolutely love that. I feel like I could speak to you for hours, but I feel like our listeners would be like, what's happened to this show, which came like a Wigan preview as well as a podcast as well. So, but mate, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all your time there.
Thank you, Jonny. Really love speaking to you. And can you ask some of your fans to bring some Parmos down for us Wiganers as well?
I'll put a tweet out after this, and we'll see if we can get you a Parmo for Wednesday. So, thank you very much for that, Barry. And I must say, Barry is such a lovely human being, and I appreciate his time so much. And the Progress Unity podcast as well. It's going to be in our links this podcast below. But guys, what are your predictions for Wednesday night? Because I feel like Ashley Fletcher nailed on to score the winner now. So, Dana, what's your prediction?
You're forgetting about Charlie White completely. Yeah, the second worst home team against the second worst away team. Wigan have conceded 11 goals at home, which is worse than only by Hull, who have conceded more than that. So, yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I don't think we're going to win. I think that's probably the prediction I'm going to land on. But score-wise, I have no idea. I said 2-2 last week, and that nearly came true. You know what? I'm going to say 2-2 again.
2-2 for Dana. Tom, what are you going to go for?
I'm going to go 1-1. I'm thinking we'll be 1-0 up up until like the last 5 minutes, and then it's written that Ashley Fletcher's going to score and rob us of the 3 points. So, yeah, I'm going to go 1-1.
1-1, okay. I'm going to stick with my prediction worse out of Barry. I'm going to go 2-1 Wigan. Either Fletcher or White to score now, I think. It's just natural that one of them does us over. But guys, thank you very much for joining me as always, and for the listeners and the viewers, thank you very much for watching us and listening to us. But Halloween is a couple of weeks away. But Boro trying to give everyone a fright, or the fans just number it all now. This has been the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was our emotional breakdown in a podcast of the Boro Breakdown.